Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Tulā Community Podcast. And I'm so happy to have you here as per usual. In this episode, I talked to Mallory Lupick, who I connected with and met sort of through the one yoga sphere in Vancouver and having some mutual friends and people that worked at that studio before. And that's slightly how I got connected to her. And then little by little, we've formed a bit stronger of a connection, and we share moments in the small business group that I host. And Mallory's been such a wonderful addition, presence, and everything to the small business group. And I've learned so much from her. I'll take this time to share a little bit about Mallory here. Mallory, founder of the branding agency By Mallory Lupick, is a creative based in Gastown, Vancouver, creating visual narratives for brands and people through brand design, strategy, and art. After years in business management and a lifetime of arts and crafts, Mallory found her way to Emily Carr University of Art and Design, and then directly into building her own business and a life centered around the things she loves to do. Now working in design, photography, and art from a place of collaboration and imperfection, a lover of the ordinary everyday moments, inspired by the flecks of paint on her studio floor, she believes that it's the individual moments that matter, that tell the stories that hold meaning. Now, I believe that this episode is also a great time for me to share about another local and very special artist and my friend and teacher, Brad, known under the artist name Templeton Gray, and his latest album release in May 2023, titled Style and Soul. I also met Brad through the One Yoga Sphere, so I think that this connects perfectly to the episode, and I'll share a little bit about Brad here now. Brad got into singing in his early years at Catholic school, and as he went through life, he discovered yoga practice and eventually traveled to India, where his songwriting really began. This latest album took him some time to release, as he went through so much change and growth over the past 5 years. He says that having children really opened his eyes to all of the things he hadn't necessarily dealt with, and how they continue to directly or indirectly affect his life. These areas fall into addiction, capitalism, religion, and our ideas of culture and beauty. I personally listen to this album all the time. I often don't skip any songs when they come up on my Apple Music. And my personal favorites are Drugs, Beauty, and Money, Style and Soul, Losing It, and No One's Gonna Save Your Soul. I will link Brad's information in the bio and his work if you want to give the album a listen. I hope that you enjoyed this episode that I recorded with Mallory. I personally really enjoyed chatting with her and recording this episode for sure. And I do look forward to connecting with her further and maybe in another episode or two, just as we start to chat and learn together. And she has so much to offer, and there's so many different little tangents, different roads, different areas of knowledge and discovery that I think that her and I could go on for sure. And so I would love to have that opportunity again with her and just continue learning from her knowledge and her wisdom and her experience. Okay, everybody, I'm here with Mallory, and she's gonna share with us some wonderful things about herself and teach us some really good things too. And so, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mallory, and I run a branding agency called By Mallory Lupick. We focus on brand design and strategy, and with that comes visual identities, website design, the strategy side of things, of course, photography. We do a lot of portrait and brand photography, and also I'm an artist, so that's a huge part of what I do in life, but also as part of the brand work that I do as well. I think that the two are, for me, could not be separated. Yeah, that's what I do.
Love it. Where do you find that overlap between the two of them? How did that start to come into play?
Well, I have been a creative artist, whatever, since as long as I can remember. Like all of my childhood memories. I have an awful memory, so to be honest, they're sparse, but all of my childhood memories are like, I remember, I mean, even as a little kid, I was like making teddy bears, or I have a lot of memories of making paper out on our back deck. And like, so I think being creative has always been in me. And I remember making the decision at the end of high school to not pursue a career in art because I had decided I didn't want to make it a job for some weird reason. Turns out I'd way rather do something I love every day for work instead of something I don't love. It's the most hilarious logic. But and like many years later, like I don't know, whatever it was, 10 years after high school, I finally decided to find a way to make art a career. And for me, I've also always had an obsession with design, especially package design. I used to collect, I mean, I have like scrapbooks, like full of wine labels or beer labels or whatever that I'll collect, especially when I'm traveling. And so eventually when I just realized there was a point where I didn't hate my job. I loved my job and loved the work I was doing, but it wasn't fulfilling or didn't light me up. And that was like a handful of years ago now, but that was when I realized that like it was just time to make a switch and to try design.
Yeah. And that resistance that you could have had or felt about not wanting to make like art your career or anything like that, I think that that's a huge thing for a lot of people where they're like, oh, I really love photography, I really love creating these things, and then it doesn't like always become a career decision for them because they don't want to lose the like love and passion for it and then like make it something where they're like trying to get like monetary gain or anything like that from it, you know. But I would hope and wish that people would make like more of that shift, because there's like the creating for the soul, and then there's like creating for like the money.
That's it, you know? And that's such a cool, I would love to just like rewrite that narrative out in the world that either being an artist as a career is hard, or it's not a real career, or it'll make you hate it. Like I just like, in hindsight, none of that's true.
No.
And I think that at the end of the day, no matter what your job is, whether it's creative or not, you need to have a hobby outside of work. So even having made the transition to a life where my career is creative, I still always do like art on the outside of that. And like, even now that I'm participating in more art shows and that, even like the art collection I'm working on feels more of a job. First of all, having shifted the mindset so that it feels like work has actually really supported my creative practice. Yeah, I could see that,
And
then also, I still do other things that aren't that outside of work. Like, I mean, currently, I've just gotten a cat. My like arts and crafts and like creative outlet that wasn't work this week was I'm starting to try and make fun, pretty cat toys for her. Like you just will always find. I just think it's important to always have an outlet that's fun, whether that's like hiking or I don't know what people do for what other people do for fun, but
whatever they do in Vancouver.
We're in Vancouver. They hike.
So
hike.
Must
That's
be
what
hiking.
people do.
Yeah, for sure.
But no matter. But even if you're a hiking guide or whatever, you work at a local outdoor store, like you still need to do things off the clock that are fulfilling, even if your job is related to those hobbies, you know. So like I just if any person out there thinking of what they want to do for their career hears this, I hope that's the one thing they learned from this, if nothing else. Like that was something I wish I had seen differently as a 17-year-old. For sure.
Yeah, you know, and I think that like when I started doing like taking pictures and like having this be an actual genuine service that people pay for, it really has pushed me to become better or to learn more or to like advance these creations, advance this art. If I was just kind of doing it willy-nilly, which I was doing for, I would say like the majority of my 20s for sure, just kind of like taking pictures, having fun, whatever, they never really advanced too much in like skill or style or anything like that. And I found a lot of growth for myself ever since I started making this a genuine offering that we do and people that we work with.
Well, I think there's something in that when you make that shift to it be, whether you want to call it a job or a career or just something that revolves around a goal, even, it creates like, for me at least, it has created structure, including like a framework and like a to-do list that I actually need to cross off, deadlines, and discipline around that, which I think is to your benefit. Like, I think then you almost feel like obliged to create the space to do it. Whereas as a hobby, it's so easy, at least for me, it's easy to not make the time.
Yeah, and I found that too, is like not like making things a maybe, not making things a maybe, and like making it like
or
a
one
yes.
day.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of one days, you and I
Yes,
think.
yeah, we do a lot of lists.
Yeah, a lot of lists and like prioritizing and things like that, But yes, not allowing your work and what feels good for you as a being to be a maybe, and I think that that's really important. And if you're starting to want to do your own thing, or you already do, to not set your own things aside and focus or give your energy to all these other things that aren't really the ones that are coming from your being. They're not coming from your soul. Like if you still have another job that you work at, or if you still do something else on the side that isn't from you, don't allow that to really like take over energetically or whatever, because you will sacrifice. Like people are like, oh, okay, should I go? Like I need to go to work or whatever, it's like, oh, they're asking me to do a shift, so I should go do that. It's like, no, keep your priority with your things, and don't allow your work to be a maybe at like the expense of your stuff for the gain of somebody else, you know, and that's huge, and like take it very seriously when you start doing those things, for sure too.
Yeah, it is so interesting how we feel obliged to build other people's lives.
Yeah, right.
And we don't feel obliged to build our own.
Yes, yeah, and you fall into it so much. I feel like I see it with so many people all the time, where they just like, I do it myself all the time, I'm like, I'll, of course, no problem, I'll do this for you. And then I'm like, why am I being taken away from what I genuinely want to do, or what I actually want to do, or what I'm already doing, but I'm willing to be self-sacrificial and take it this way for some reason.
I know. It's something that I've really been thinking a lot about recently, is the idea of like making choices to support your priorities. And for me, at least, I can only share for myself, but this like, it's just been, that exact thought has been coming up a lot for me lately, and it's made me realize that I am not necessarily always clear on what my priorities are, and I think it's so important to get clear on that.
Yes.
So that every decision you make can support your priorities and like support the life you want to live, whatever you want to build, like etc.
Right. And that reminds me of something you and I had talked about when it just came to creating our own work and building our own businesses and our own brands and things like that, is like becoming very clear. And you've helped me a lot with that, is like just on your whys and what you're doing and what your goals are and what your vision is, and like if somebody asked you what you do, if you have something pretty clear to tell them, which I think can be really complicated. It's complicated for me, for sure. I'm like, and I've just recently, I would say, like inspired by you, been able to like have a little bit more clarity on what's going on and what I do and how I do it.
100%. And it can be so hard to see that when you're in it.
Yeah.
It's one thing, like I find it, I don't want to say easy, but it comes naturally for me to see that in other people, to like see their why, or to like at least I do think it's one of my superpowers to be able to see what matters to someone, and sometimes that just looks like asking, like me knowing what questions to ask. Like I can't read your mind or like read what's in your heart. Like I won't inherently know the answer.
No.
But I do believe that's one of my superpowers, is like seeing what makes someone tick, or like seeing the details and like pulling out the details that matter that they may not have seen themselves. And I think it's one of those things where it's so hard to see when you're in it. I'm borrowing, with permission, and I use this phrase a lot. There's a marketer from Toronto whose name I'm blanking on, but
we'll add it in later.
He shared with me once when we were having a similar conversation, that you can't see the label when you're in the pickle jar.
Right.
So like when you're in it, you can't see it for yourself. And so I think it's one of those things where like, whether it's your why or the details that tell your story, like you can't see when you're in it. It's interesting. It's hard to do for yourself, but it's almost like you need someone to act as a mirror, to ask those questions or to help you pull out that why or like that thread. I know as someone, I can relate as someone, I feel like both of us offer a lot of different things within our businesses.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it feels so scattered, but it's so nice as someone personally, when I can be an external viewpoint, I see it like feels very holistic, the work that you do. And that's usually true, because we're not 3 different people inside one body.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you do have a common purpose, whether or not you see it that way. Like you do have a common,
it does come down
you are one personality
to that. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so like even if it's like cat toys and branding, they're probably more related, or
think.
the way that I offer those 2 things are related.
Yes.
Like for me, I believe that what matters is in like those ordinary everyday details. Like I don't necessarily even like the big days, they matter, but it's the little details of those big days or those big events that matter. It's the way someone held your hand, or it's you know, it's like the little details. It's not the big thing.
No, it never actually is, which is really
totally.
Yeah.
And so it's like curating those little bits to tell a story is what I think is so beautiful and so important. And so like whether that's the fact that I want cat toys that are pretty, or and like
that's the small detail.
Because that's what I see every day. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus like I don't even know an example on the other end of things, but it's like those everyday little moments. And that's what I love to pull out in people's branding too.
Yes.
Whether it's like pulling out the way they wrote. I don't know why I love to use. I think this is such a beautiful example that I haven't actually used with the client, but I've always wanted to. Imagine you started like a jewelry business or a cat toy making business or whatever.
It's going to be all about the cat toys. It's relevant right now.
Cats are on the brain. I have a new cat.
If you guys didn't know.
Yeah, I just got a cat a couple days ago. And we're so in love already.
Right.
I've never been
unnamed.
Like a pet. Unnamed. We've never been like a pet mom at all. I'm not maternal, really.
Right.
Obsessed with this cat.
Yeah.
So.
You're gonna say jewelry making business or cat toy making
whatever, but say you started this business making it in the corner of a garage at the house you lived in 3 houses ago, and imagine I like picture seeing the way that person wrote their address on every envelope from that garage. You know, like what if we took that number, say it was like 4652, whatever, but like in their handwriting, what if that became part of their branding? You know, it's like that little like, where did your story start? Like, tell me the details that matter. Yeah. You know, like they don't matter, but that number is so meaningful for that person.
Yes, it is.
Like they probably wrote it however many hundreds of times on envelopes when they were shipping out their first orders.
Right.
Like that just gave me goosebumps.
Of
like
course.
Those are the little pieces that I think, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, I think those are the pieces that are so important for me.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to like life being made up of small moments, and like how the small things in life are the most extraordinary, you know, and those who are like wise can see that and see them, you know, and the questions that you ask, I think like for me when we talk, it gets me thinking, and there's different things that come up for me, of course, and then I watch that in the small business meetings that we host, of course, since your introduction to the meeting. It's been wonderful. You've been such an important and like, not to say valuable, but like such a valuable addition to the group, because, you know, I see people just approaching things differently, like since you start asking these questions, and I feel like you ask very good questions.
Thank you.
You know, and I think that you are able to recognize that, but I think it's important that you also know that even if you, because you know we always like have a little bit of self-doubt, you know, if we're like doing okay or not or whatever, right? And it's like, no, these questions really do help everybody in the group.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah,
right. And they're able to like come back and reevaluate, and I see all the shifts in people whenever you do talk to them, and you're like, oh, can I suggest this and whatever, you know, and I see those shifts on their socials or just in them, or like what I talk about with them outside of the group or anything like that, you know, and so those questions are, I would say, super important for people to have that, and to like, to understand themselves and their brand a little bit more and how they're going to go about doing that. Yeah,
I mean, asking those questions, especially when someone feels like they've, whether or not they use this language or like recognize it, seeing someone who's like hit a roadblock or a hurdle or like feels like something is hard, I feel like that is such fertile ground, and it's so fun for me to ask questions in those moments. Like I love that part of my job, or like whether it's the questions that are uncovering the details or uncovering the easier path for them, uncovering their why. Again, I don't know the answers, but I do feel like I just love asking those questions and helping someone get there, because it doesn't have to, none of this has to be hard. Like
Yeah,
whether it's your
yeah,
branding or
yes.
whether it's like your storytelling or how you write a newsletter, like the structure of your newsletter or this or that. Like none of it has to be hard. And I think everyone does what they do for a reason and has so much to offer. So it shouldn't be hard.
Yeah, you know, and so when you get a client that comes to you, like, let's say fresh out the gate, they've never met you before, but they've, you know, seen your work and they want to work with you and all those things, do you often get someone who is at the point of a roadblock and they're like, I don't really know what to do now? Or do you get a mix, right? Like, or people that are just kind of, that's not their forte, is like putting together branding and like understanding their brand and wanting to build, I guess, basically from scratch, like starting from square one. And so what do you primarily work with?
Normally, that's a good question. Most people I get to work with come to me at square one and wouldn't even know how to put together a brand package or like a brand identity. Usually we'll have some ideas about what they like or don't like, whether that's visually, like, oh, I like this about this logo, or like, this is what I'm picturing. Often people come to me okay, hold on. Let me finish one thought at a time. Or people will have like expertise in marketing or something, or have done a lot of research and have a business plan, but have no idea how to put the storytelling, visual, etc. side of things together. And then the other group of people I get, I would say, are people who have like a fully formed idea and just need help executing. Because most people in that category will have seen something they love, will have an idea, usually have some attachment to it, but would have no idea how to create it, to take it from their brain to real life. And
That's okay.
And what I find really interesting about people who come to me with a fully formed idea is it's usually not what we end up going with.
Yeah,
Like,
right. There's so much there.
Yeah, and that's something, what I know about people I love most to work with are people who trust the creative practice.
Yeah.
Or like the creative process, I should say. Like for example, recently I did some merch for an artist, or also in the same week I did an album cover for an EP for somebody, for a musician. And in both cases, they had like a pretty formed idea. And with the tote, for example, we went in what we ended up with is in the same vein, in the sense that it was something that was personal to her. It had her, or like the vibe of her on it. And it was like, had hand-drawn elements, like it felt personal. But it looked nothing like her original, but it communicated what she wanted to communicate. Like she was clear on the message she wanted to share and why she wanted to connect with her fans personally. And then with the EP cover, he came to me with like a pretty, just like a sketch, but he like knew the elements he wanted in it. But originally we thought that it would be like an illustration, and we went in with a piece of film photography and that I art directed and whatever. And it just went in a totally different direction, but the point of it, like the key communication piece, was still there. So I find that people come in one of two categories. They think they know exactly what they want, or they have no idea what they want. Right. It's one of the two.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we always end up somewhere super different, so you never know.
And do you find that you're working with a lot of the same kind of start with people that know what they want and don't know what they want? Like, are there a lot of the same, like, even questions?
Can I recognize them before I...
Yeah, somehow, yeah, for sure. Like, is there that? And like, are you asking a lot of the same questions to the person who has no idea and the person that, you know, like, is it still the same approach?
Yeah, it's the same process, because at the end of the day, whether you think you know what you want or whether you don't, you don't know what you want. Yeah. Regardless, I still need to know what the point is.
Yes. Yeah, like, what are they trying to get across?
Yeah.
Right. And like, when this is visual, of course, are you trying to like work with just like translating something visually that in the hopes would like get that across with, of course, like no words, and you're just trying to like get this visual capture?
I mean, sometimes it's words. But typically and even words, because we're not talking about copywriting, although I do have a wonderful copywriter on my team, but because in this instance we're not talking about copywriting, when I do use words, there's still a visual element.
Yeah.
So because you're not reading a paragraph or something, unless you are, and even then, that block of text would be a visual element on the page, right? But say I was to use a word, or like, for example, in a merch design I recently did, there's a lot of the person's handwriting on it. And so even that, whether or not you stopped to read it, the handwritten quality itself is going to feel personal, like a note someone left for you, you know? So in that case, even the words, again, were intentionally chosen to be done in her handwriting versus typed out as a block of text.
And so, like, you're able to, I guess, like, incorporate all of these things that, like you said about the number, like, there's obviously some sort of, like, thing there that adds this extra, like, personal element. And I think that we, as just people, like, love that. Like, sometimes I'm really surprised by how much people really love, like, when you just, like, throw personal things in there. They're just, like, kind of like, oh, wow, there's so much here. It's like an Easter egg, you know?
Yes.
For
Oh
sure.
my gosh. Design Easter eggs are one of my favorite things
For
ever.
Sure.
One of my favorite things, and I love when they're not
I think
obvious.
I could see that. I feel like you could see that in your work, for sure.
But you've heard me say this, to your point, you've heard me say this a million times. In
Say
different
it again.
But people, most of us, myself included, will buy from like a box store or from Amazon, especially when convenience is like prioritized, or if I can't find something in my community that's like relatively easy, because let's be real, convenience is often a priority. But people don't want to buy from box stores or Amazon or whatever it is. People don't want to. We do often because for whatever, all of our reasons, but people don't want to. They want to buy from other humans. Like, we want to connect. And I think that's an important thing for people to recognize, that like unless for whatever reasons you are communicating your business as a large corporate entity, which there's totally a time and a place. But most businesses I work with, at least, are connecting with other humans. And so, and like, we're not connected to Amazon. Like, are you friends with the delivery guy or with
some people
Bezos,
are?
Whatever his name is? Well, great.
Don't know my name.
Oh my gosh.
I'm delivering another package to your house.
Oh my god, I bet.
How are you doing, Sharon?
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
But it's just like, your branding doesn't have to be perfect, in the sense that it doesn't have to be a shiny template.
Yeah.
Like, perfect for me is when it's like communicated consistently.
Yeah.
And it is intentional. Perfect for me isn't like the shiny plastic looking, no human element at all, you know?
Well, and the work that you're doing, or like a lot of the work that we are doing, especially the people that we talk to a lot here, of course, you know, this cannot be replicated. It can't be something that you can do through Amazon. You can maybe like find someone or something like that, but it's that cannot exist in the same way. And I totally agree with you, because I feel like for me too, sometimes I offer even just working with trades with people, or like partial trades with people, just offering a service that I have for a service that they do, and I genuinely love working with that because of the human element and just being able to share. And there's no like kind of mix up of like money and all these things or whatever. It's just very like human to human. It's like, I have this thing that I can give to you and you need it, and you have this thing that I would like as well, and here we'll just exchange them and make it work. And like staying connected, being to being that way, I think is really nice. And it takes away so much of the like fuss and the complication of like, I would say, the modern day world. Yeah.
Well, and again, the piece that I hear in that is like, what matters for you is the human connection, right? And like I have always collected, like I said, different I've mentioned it, like I've always collected packaging or business cards and whatever, and I swear all of my favorites are like tactile or imperfect, or like I have one business card that I have kept from not even that long ago, whatever. I was visiting family in Calgary, and even just putting the paper they used, and I guess the dyes that they used, even the like day that it was in my back pocket when I flew home, it almost really like got worn and faded really quickly, and I loved that. Like it looked so cool. I was like, I'm sure, knowing the business, maybe it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, I would use that to my advantage sometime. Like that, like I would use that as a design element. Like I think it looked beautiful. I still have the business card in a.
And so you would use the design element of what it ended up looking like, or the fact that it was like easily worn down, or like it ended up being worn down. It's like something memorable for someone.
Yeah, like both, I guess. But if you knew that a material was going to wear a certain way, you should design with that in mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, think about the way, I'm so making this up in the moment, but think about the way like a perfect leather jacket wears. Like if I was designing for a, like, you know, over time how leather softens and like we'll get a patina or whatever it's called. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but you know, I love to use words that it might not be right. That's
sometimes
definitely
I
something.
do too.
Yeah,
Like
I love
Whitney,
it. I just
like,
roll with it. Yeah.
Stop.
Just roll with it.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I so often will look at my best friend and she's like, "No, you gotta keep going." I'm like, "Okay, great."
Okay, thanks. It's good encouragement.
But if I was designing for someone who's a leather worker, and that was part of what they loved about their work,
is that it would
the
wear.
leather it would wear. I'm like, oh, great. Let's set up a business card like this that's gonna wear, and like have your tagline. Bring in my amazing copywriter. Like that, like your tagline that has something to do with the way that it will age over time. It's an heirloom piece. Like it will age beautifully. Yeah.
You know, and that's one of my favorite things too, is that everything, I love being able to make everything connected and tied together, even though people may realize it or they don't, but I just love that like little sneaky consistency between everything.
I think that happens when every decision is intentionally made.
Yeah.
And whether or not people notice it, consciously, unconsciously they will.
They still will, yeah.
Like when you're messaging, whether that's like visual, wording, colors, like all the things, when it's intentional and consistent, you, as the kids say, you've heard me say this before too, but as the kids say, it will live in people's brain rent free.
Yeah,
so whether or not they know it, I mean, I've used this example with you too, but I was out on Main Street the other day. Can't remember the name of the coffee shop. It's near the Legree on Main Street. For anyone who wants to find this little store,
Somebody
they're a little coffee shop on the
pin.
corner. Yeah, seriously, they're a coffee shop on the corner. And one half of it's a coffee shop, the other is like a little mercantile, and they sell like home goods.
Oh, nice.
And it's so well curated. Where am I going with this? What was I just talking about?
Like conscious or subconscious, like
okay.
tying everything together intentionally.
I just went
one of
on
us
a tangent.
One of us. You're gonna save me later, so it's
I
all
will.
good.
I got you.
Like,
But I saw a mug and immediately thought of another business owner who I know always is holding a handmade mug in in their photos, in their marketing, in their Instagram, and I know that they have a huge collection. So this person does not make mugs. It has nothing to do with their business, but it's so part of them and their branding that when I was out doing something different with a friend, I thought of their business because I saw a mug.
Yes.
So like when you're consistent in how you share yourself and your business with the world, whether or not you're the face of your business, because I think this is true for personal brands and non-personal brands. But if you're consistent with your messaging, like if that handwritten address is like all across your branding and whatnot, when someone sees like some cool handwriting or when they see like a cool address written in a cool way or something, they're like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to reach out to that person, or and maybe not today, but maybe that'll come years from now, but you are in their subconscious in a way that is really interesting and really cool.
Yeah, you know, and it's very powerful actually, you know, more powerful than we think. It's like obviously quite subtle. Like the mug thing is like, you know, it's not her thing, but now just because she shares it, you see a mug and bada bing, bada boom, you're able to make that connection, you know, and like I'm noticing it myself with my greenhouse juice kick that I'm on, is that people are like sharing, like some person, they didn't even tag me, but they shared that they were at Whole Foods and they were buying greenhouse, whatever, you know, and they didn't post anything. It was just a picture of their basket basically. And I was like, oh, greenhouse, and they're like, yeah, I saw your story and I knew that I needed to go get this thing, and I was like, wow, so people might just all see that I've been drinking a lot of this juice from this brand and think of
think of me somehow, even though I'm not connected to that brand in any way. I've just been like sharing that this is
and
the
you've
thing.
only been sharing that not even for that
it's
long.
Like a few weeks.
Like it happens.
I'm like a juice influencer.
Yeah, you should be. I saw that you take them. Just keep doing it.
I'm good. I'm greenhouse.
They should be sponsoring.
Sponsor this episode.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to try it. I'm gonna have to get on board.
Honestly, it's very nice. I've been enjoying. They have like a whole. Never mind, but they have a whole like.
That's another podcast episode. You got to bring them onto a podcast.
I'd like to interview Greenhouse, but yeah, I see that with myself, and I feel like that's like a small aspect of like that's my mug right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's my thing that people are like, oh, they see the mug and they think of your friend or they think of this person that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that of course those things, that connection, that like connecting the dots to somebody else in their work and their brand, I would say are not intentional. Like the mug thing, I would say is not that person putting it out there with the intention that when you see a mug, you're going to think of them. I would doubt that there's like actual intention there.
Well, I would be curious because I mean we've talked a little bit about personal brands before, and just so everyone's on the same page with the way I use the term personal brand. I would consider something a personal brand when you're the face of it, like when you aren't behind a totally unrelated brand name, etc. Like your, regardless of the name, I guess, but your face isn't on the brand. So a personal brand, when your face is the front of it, and you're strongly associated with what the brand is and the value that the brand has. This is a piece coming back to the fact that I think it should be like making content in 2024. It doesn't have to be hard. I do advise people to look around at what they're already doing, what they're already wearing, what their life already is, and intentionally make those pieces part of your brand. So like whether that's like looking at your wardrobe and seeing the colors you typically wear, because then like, and just look at like what your life already looks like. Like I think like if you're using a different handmade mug and that's one of your favorite things, like be intentional. Like you'll have that instead of a Starbucks mug when you're in a photo or something.
Stories or photos or something.
Yeah, like I think, and this goes for all branding. So like, oh my gosh, this was years ago now. I don't know why this example is coming to mind, but an earlier brand design project, like logo, etc., visual identity, I did for a band, a Vancouver-based band, which is awesome. They actually just reached out about doing a logo for a new band. Nice. I think I'm doing that for them next month, which is going to be, they're a fun group. So, but they, this one band, when they were talking about creating, I helped them create like a social media strategy along with their branding. And it felt like a big hurdle for them because they're just like, they're jamming out, like they're, they do like kind of like grungy metal, we had some really interesting adjectives. This was years ago now. I can't remember exactly how they described it. It was like, they were a really cool group, but it just felt like they didn't want to have like curated photo shoots and like polished content. A, felt like a hurdle. B, isn't them. Like they're very grungy and very like spit the truth. Like they're not polishing shit. They're saying what they think. And so the conversation I had with them around content creation, it's like one thing for me to help them create a strategy around what they want to communicate, but how they want to communicate was this next hurdle. Like, what does it look like? How are we creating that content? And
that is a fine balance between having some structure, because you are making this plan for them, but also, it's not something that's like very strongly wanting to be like totally very curated and
like what you're sharing in terms of like the topic. And I mean, this isn't exactly, these words aren't going to fit for a band necessarily, but that should be in alignment with your business plan and your that's your marketing plan, right? But how you're sharing it, the tone of voice, the images, like how you're creating the content is a whole nother piece, which I love. And for example, for them, I was like, well, and they have a studio they practice in. I mean, this was years ago. At the time, at least, they had a studio space that they practiced and recorded in the downtown east side.
Right.
And they had they have a political involvement, like political views, like they care about what's going on in their neighborhood. It inspires them. Walking down the street, they see a crow and like eating garbage, like things like that were part of their image. It's their environment. It's where they're already on, what they're already doing. And so the conversation we had, I was like, that's the content. Like that's it. You're already doing it. You're already walking down the street. Like we all already we don't all, but we often will already take out our phone and like take a photo of that cool crow.
Yes.
Or like I saw a crow the other day. This was so random. I saw a crow the other day on the street that had white spots all over it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't look it up, but I was wondering, is that a sickness or is this just like a genetic?
Right.
Anyways, but for example, like I should have taken that photo and
you,
sent it to him.
You thought about them, even just from that, you know,
100%.
like that, and made that memory connection for
In fact,
you.
it was probably, when we started this part of this conversation, I looked up and saw a crow. That probably was like some subconscious seed for sure.
Yeah.
But it's like, what are you already doing? What is already like, and as long as you share it, you're choosing that content intentionally, which doesn't mean curating a huge photo shoot, which I could go off about that on photo shoots too. There's a time and a place. None of these things are wrong, just for me. Yeah. But it isn't about changing what's happening. It's capturing and curating all these like everyday details, the ordinary. It's like, it's curating the ordinary. That's a phrase that I love to use. Yeah. You're curating your ordinary. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you create this really interesting, consistent messaging about who you are.
Yeah, and you don't need to try very hard for that, you know, when you tap into that. And that's something that I like and always liked about you and your work when I, you know, really started like, you know, observing you a little bit more, whatever, is I've talked to you about it before. I very much value and appreciate the authenticity that you're able to translate and like just offer to your platforms, to your website, to the way that you talk, to the way that you create, everything. And I think that even this advice of what you're saying now, of just like, what do you already do? Like, what are the colors that you're already surrounded by? It's advice that I've given credit to you for, but I've already shared it with like a good amount of people. Because even yesterday I was talking to someone and they were sharing with me, because I was editing some photos at work, and a lady that works there, she saw that I was editing. She's like, "Oh, you take pictures?" I said, "Yeah, it's one of my things, you know." Like, whatever. And she said, "Oh, I need pictures, and I've been trying to make a website. And I sit down and I have no idea what to do with it, and I want these colors, but then I want these colors." And I said to her, from your advice, what colors do you already wear a lot? What colors are you already like surrounded by? What colors do you have in your home? And just make that the colors that you choose, because it helps so much. And that was just advice, of course, purely from you. And I think that it's very important for most people to find authenticity in whatever people are sharing, offering, creating, whatever business they put together. That connection and that personal touch, which is a lot of what we're talking about here, just like people using their handwriting, people putting in personal elements, like involving their grandmother somehow, like, you know, those things go really far, and they're the things that do give you goosebumps when you really realize and like see all those things coming through. And yeah, I find that it's not too difficult for me to create the content or to put things out there or to like share on my story, because it's just me. It's just what I like. You know, here I am just being able to be like, yeah, I like this type of thing, and here's the thing, and I love green, so here's lots of green. Yeah. And it just works. It just works that way.
And to take that a step further, or like a side step adjacent, I don't know, is that sometimes that can look like creating a space that makes it easy. Mm-hmm. So like this would even be true for someone who doesn't have a personal brand necessarily, but needs to do product photography all the time. Like, do you have a clean space on your floor? Or like, if you don't like your floor, you don't like colors, or the colors of your wall don't work, just grab a poster board or like a piece of fabric.
I've utilized stuff like that. Yeah.
My biggest one for especially like photography. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I use, I do, as a photographer, I have like a backdrop. We'll take that outside, we'll use it inside, etc. But also I just, I have created my space, my home space around all this, my studio space around what I do. So I have a wall with a million nail holes in it, but you could just like, I will nail fabric up on my wall. Like, take 2 pictures down and just use those 2 holes or whatever, hide the holes with other pictures.
Oh, is that what you have going on here?
Yeah, can you see all of the holes in my wall? Yes. Yeah, probably once a year I fill all these and repaint it. Sometimes I'll like splash paint on the wall. It's ridiculous sometimes, but do you like, who was it? The lead singer of Wilco?
Oh, okay.
I read a book by him.
Oh, okay.
The book was about songwriting. But one piece that I have never forgotten that he said, like one piece of advice he shared was to build your life around what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's also your physical space. That's like where you spend your time. Like that this could go down a whole nother rabbit hole, but
take us there, Mallory.
Well, but to keep it related to branding, it's like what in your space can make what you're doing easier too. Like, I often will hear from people who need to do content creation, they don't have a space to do it.
Yeah, space is hard come by for people. You know, space
especially
is
in a
super
city.
valuable. Yes, super valuable.
City.
Yes.
And like studio time isn't cheap, and
No.
it's like sometimes the pressure on a big photo shoot and whatnot just doesn't work. Like, I get it. And so yeah, for me, my like super common solve for people is like just go down to my favorite well, I have a few favorite fabric stores actually. Dresso is really close for me though. So Dresso, just go down there, have some fun. They're closed on Sundays and Mondays, so don't go on a Sunday or Monday.
Good tip.
But I do that all the time. I'm like, oh. But just go grab some fabric that you love. It's like a really cheap solve. You don't need to spend a ton of money. And just nail it up somewhere.
And
or
it's
throw it down
super
on the floor.
fun to work with, you know. Like I've been working with it lately as well, and I just find that like I'm like, oh, this is very.
It's tactile.
It's tactile. It's fun. It can become so many different things. Like you can either you can use it on the body, you could use it on a wall, you can use it just on the floor. Yes, you could lay a product into it or on it, whatever. There's a lot there that can be done with that, and yes, you can even make your wonderful art with it as well. You know, put it on canvas.
The artwork I've been doing has been very fabric focused, which I've never really gotten into. I mean, I can sew. Like I have shared with you, I grew up like making teddy bears, whatever. But I've never gotten into making clothes or like making teddies or quilts or whatever. None of that stuck. So it's been really interesting in like this era of my life coming back to fabric in different ways. Because I love to make art on fabric. Like fabric is just, I've always loved it. I have like stacks of it stashed away in closets that I don't know what I'll ever do with, but I bought it because I loved it and I want to make art with it. And like last year I did a line of bandanas that were hand dyed and hand printed. Now I'm making and modifying fabrics, printing on them, drawing on them, and stretching them over canvases. But I just think it's such a versatile tool. And I have so many dream projects. I mean, I started covering stools too with fabric.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I see it here. Yeah.
We'll see. Again with like the random hobbies, like the creative pieces, like I'll always have a different project that isn't for a client. Like there's always something.
Yes.
And
that's for the being. That's for the self.
It is.
You know, this is just for self. It's not something, and I think that's one of the.
It's also cup filling. It fills my cup so that I can do the client work.
100%. You know, and there's like a mix too, where it's like you're saying, what did you say? Sorry, design your life around what you want to do.
Build your life, whatever.
Build your
it was
life.
you said,
You know, and so it's like yes, we love all these things. I feel very similar. It's really only in the last few years that I did realize that I'm actually a lot more creative than I thought, and I do like to express myself in this way. More than I would have ever realized in my younger kind of years. I'm similar. Like I was always kind of like putzing around with stuff. But then lately I'm like, oh, maybe this is more my thing. This is more what I do. Yeah. You know, is make these things and create and play around a little bit. And to like tap into those things and see where that can take you just as a career and like as something you build your life around and you work with and all of that good stuff. And then you still have these other things that like come along with it that they're not business related, but they fill the cup, you know.
Well, and even all these like random, I have gotten so much joy from making all these random daily things that's like I just love, and want to do more of. And even recently, I had someone, a friend, was spending the night. They were in the city for the night. Long story. They were using my apartment essentially for a night. When they were stopping through, and so I had a set of guest keys and a guest fob, and it just was an opportunity to make a really funky keychain for that, like so random, but all these little things, these stools that I've covered, bandanas, planting seeds in the next coming few months. I'm actually planning on putting a lot of those like random one-off art pieces on my website, on like an e-com store. Yeah. Because I love to make them, and then they just sit here. But I'm like, oh, that brings me so much joy. I want to be able to share it, you know. And that's again with like building the world or your world around what you love to do. Like even when I started this bandana project, it was a huge barrier that I felt like I had to, probably there was a year of me battling with the fact that I felt like I had to nail in exactly what the dye process would look like, the print, what color everything was in, like all these little details. I battled with the idea that I had to pick one choice for each of these little details and execute a run of them, and just do like an identical run. And one day I just had the realization that I could take that pressure off and they could all be one-offs. And my world like opened. I was like, oh, I could sell, like, this is bandana. I did like bandana 1 through 60 or whatever.
So you give yourself permission.
Yeah, I mean, someone very close to me in my life recently shared that gave me the advice that we create our own prisons. Like, we create our own stressful situations.
Absolutely. With everything.
With literally everything.
With everything.
Who was it? Oh, I can't even remember who said this, where I heard it, but somebody was complaining about how something was hard, and the answer, not my answer, but a answer they were given was like, okay, but who's making it hard? Like, why is it hard? Like, and yes, not to take that away, there are challenging situations we have to face in life that are out of our control.
Yes, and we do have to like honor that. But I feel like in these conversations that comes up a lot too, where it's like, okay, we honor that, like,
there are hard things.
Yes, there's super hard things. There's privilege. There's all these things, but still, you know, it has to come back to that power of like the mind and the self, and how you take away your own joy a lot of the time.
And like 100%, I would not give this advice to someone in like a challenging situation with a loved one or something. Like this, like I'm not talking about that.
This is just life.
But like, for example, like there became a point, like I would say from 6 months ago to like, I don't know, 6 months before that. There was like the 6 month period where I was not enjoying almost any of the photography work I was doing.
Wow.
And it's a huge part of my business. It's probably half of the work that I do.
Yeah.
Okay, this feels like a little bit of a vulnerable, it's not like deep, but it just, because I know like clients will hear this is going to feel like a little bit of a big share, but so stick with me, listen till the end. But there was a time not all that long ago, sometime this winter, I decided I was going to quit photography and felt so much lighter. I felt so good. I decided to get rid of, still haven't got rid of them, but I'm getting rid of my lights that I don't like to use. I hate my strobes. I don't like using them. And the really interesting thing was, as soon as that happened, I have been even busier and had really cool photography opportunities since that day. And it's put me in a different position. Oh my God. I enjoy it again. I decided to quit it, and so many people recently have been like, so you're doing a lot of photography, hey? Like, what the heck? And I'm like, yeah, but I love it again. It like took this pressure off of it. And what it did for my brain is, it means deciding I didn't have to do it means that I don't have to create I mean, this is not a news flash. I've heard so many creatives say this, but the importance around it let me no longer feel like I had to create something somebody was going to like. And I've seen that ripple through all the work that I do, that now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to create what I think is badass, because that's why people have hired me.
Absolutely.
And it even comes down to like in a photography session, I know you've heard me talk a lot about my photography before, I really shoot from a place of just like capturing what is, again, like curating those ordinary moments.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that we don't art direct a shoot. Doesn't mean we don't like set up and do prep and like make sure everything's on brand or whatever, depending on who the client is. But it's not, I don't work from like a shot list. Like, I'll have a list of pose ideas, and I will like usually they're prompt ideas, not poses.
It's like inspiration. I think inspiration is like a nice
just
thing.
If nothing else, to communicate that we're on the same page. Yeah, to be honest,
of course.
And then see where it takes us, and just like capture what's there. Where was I going with this?
We were talking about.
I don't know how many times this will happen.
It's okay. We were talking about just kind of staying true to what you want to create, and
so in that, like, I've even seen this show up, taking the pressure off to like create what someone else wants or thinks they want or whatever. It even comes like, I had right around that time I had a photo shoot where the client was really taking control of direction, and totally not one of my, like, in terms of results, they're a great person, like, get along with them, but not one of my favorite
That's
sets of
actually
photos
not
I've
something
ever
that I
had.
like either, actually, which is really interesting. And when I've experienced
Well,
that, when people move too fast, like my subject, they like
Yeah.
move really fast between like, I want this and I want that and whatever, and I'm like, slow down, like, you know,
let
and
us just capture the moment.
capture the moment, but also
just
yes,
be here.
and I just like the symbiotic relationship between us,
Mhm.
between me taking your photo and you being the one that's getting your picture taken, and we connect and we work together. But when someone takes like a lot of that,
Reins.
it
It's
does
hard.
make it
It's hard as a
challenging.
creative to work with.
Oh yeah.
And I think part of that is like the importance for a creative to trust their gut and what they're doing, and
It's true.
I think those moments make it harder to do
Mhm.
that, or like
Mhm.
make it easier to forget to do that, I would say.
Yes.
And the other piece that I would say is the importance around somebody picking a creative to work with, whether that's in like branding, photography, whatever,
Mhm.
someone that they connect with and someone whose work that they like.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're in that position, you just like there's a different type of trust. I think when you're working with on a creative project, that's really important in both directions. By no means am I saying that when someone has an idea, I just get to go run with it. Like I think collaborative work. I love collaborative work. Like I think that's so important
Mhm.
and can create such cool things. Like as someone who works in like portrait photography and in like just creative work in general, I create work for other people to tell their own stories, right? So like I get joy from, and I think it's one of my strengths is that I can like pull out your story and create a visual for it. But I have to be able to trust my creative gut to create that. I have to listen and then trust, you know?
Yes.
And I think that trust is such a big piece when you're working on anything that's like telling a story, you know, and like that's creative.
Yeah.
And otherwise, why are you hiring someone?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
again with the tangents, but
no, it's good.
Here we
It's
are.
good. No, it's good. And you know, I find that too, that that telling of the story is something that's like super valuable, super special. And I would say sometimes you see a lot of branding or just people creating, or just even branding agencies that are like really missing the mark on that. And maybe that's not their thing. Maybe that's not how they operate, you know. But if someone is able to work with you and capture a genuine story and then translate that to an audience who has no idea what the story even was, to begin with, huge.
yeah.
Very, very powerful, very special, for sure. And that keychain element that you were talking about, it reminded me of what you had shared with me too, about the brand is you, you know. And that keychain thing, this was not for a business related thing, this is just someone that you knew that was staying with you. And I can guarantee you that keychain you made had colors that you already work with, fabrics that you already really like, things that actually would just work for your website or work for your branding, work for your colors, whatever. And yes, the brand is just you. Is it from Robin Savage?
I was about to give credit there.
Yes,
the
of course.
Brand is
Yeah.
Is a Robin Savage piece.
Yes.
Who is an amazing.
Yeah, I started following.
Human.
I started following them, and I was like, I'm curious to see like what goes on over here. Of course,
her
right?
Her work in I don't even know how to put into a phrase what she does. She does a lot of like I would say like brand coaching, business coaching. She's a copywriter, but I've learned a ton from her. So
no kidding, you know.
She's got an amazing podcast as well.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah.
I'll have to tune in for sure, you know. But yes, and that reminded me of that and what you had shared with me about Robin and and the brand just being you, because look how natural that was for you to incorporate these elements or aspects that do exist for you on a creative level. They do exist for you in ways that you share with your audience and share with your community or share at the art show that you just were at, you know. It just flows in really naturally, and that's the importance of the authenticity in creation, in marketing, in branding, and everything, you know. And I do want you to share a little bit about this brand in a day thing that you have. Yes, because I remember I went on your website probably like 5 months ago, maybe 6, and that was my first time really kind of there. And I knew roughly, we had not met, but I'd seen you at the yoga studio and stuff like that, you know, but I don't think we ever really talked. But then from mutual friends, I was like, oh, I know that this is Mallory, whatever. And so I was like, let me go on her website, see what she's doing, you know, and all that stuff. And I saw, brand in a day. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of that before. And it's like, again, she's come up with something so like kind of unique, so special, and she's offering this thing, and she was able to put these pieces together. So if you don't mind, I'd like you to share about what that is, how that looks, and how that goes.
Well, first of all, the first thing that comes to mind when you bring all this up and talk about my website is how out of date my website is.
It's a very good website, though. I mean, it does
you.
the trick. I like it. I think it's cool.
I mean, it's out of date, and
are you trying to make another one? Like, you trying to update it?
It needs updating for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's so much work, though.
It is a lot. It's
good, but it's a lot of work. Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. It's just hard to create the space, and I'm actually working with a marketing,
good
with
on
an
you.
external marketing agency right now. So
right.
I will say I'm also waiting for that
for
work
some
to be done
things to come through, right?
before, so that I'm not
priorities
spinning one thing at a time, and just also like let the foundation happen before you build the house.
Yeah, fair.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna be rebuilding the rooms or whatever. But but Brandon today. Okay, so Brandon today was born out of I call her my business bestie. I don't even know if she knows that. Actually, I've tagged her as that on Instagram, but I call her my business bestie. Savannah Thornton.
Okay.
She runs a consulting business called Stella Casa, which I also did some high level branding for, and I love the branding we did for her. But she is a copywriter, brand strategist, from what I would call her. She also is like such a superhero at producing really amazing events and experiences. She's amazing, but I lean on her as a copywriter a ton. And we got into this flow where we had started doing branding, and brand strategy from foundations through to the complete visuals, which the brand identity will also include like mission, vision, values, their tone of voice, and Sav would do all their core copywriting when we were doing these like brand kits for people, which often would turn into websites, we're doing the copy, me doing the design, etc. And what we found as we started doing that work in the last few years is that the biggest request we had, or barrier clients were hitting, was for various reasons weren't ready to do the full build and the full investment. And that could have been because they didn't have the resources, or they weren't ready, or they just were starting like a secondary business to the 9-to-5 work that they do, and they just needed something to share when someone asked about what they were doing. So it wasn't that they needed this big lift, they just needed an easy lift
it's less daunting.
for now. Yeah. And it can be a for now situation because I tend to see most businesses will reiterate their business plan within their first year or so. It's so common.
Yeah, you do see that a lot.
But you need something from the start, you know? Like in our day and age.
Like you get the ball rolling.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need just something for people to check you out. And so, there's like so many scenarios that we were finding a full build didn't work for people. And so we developed between the two of us. I 100% can't remember where the idea started or like who came up with it first, but between us, we came up with this idea of Brandon a Day. And the idea is that we have there's about a week ahead of time where we'll work with you a little bit like the week ahead. It's not just 24 hours. But we began with a really thorough intake form. We learned as much as we can about you. We jump on a call, and then we actually meet in person for a few hours. We go through your intake, and we'll have prepped some foundational work for us to essentially workshop with the client for a few hours, which on Sav's part will include some of the core copywriting for us to work from and edit and like revise. When we bounce the client back and forth between the copywriting that she's doing with them, and I'll have some brand boards developed at this point. And again, we'll pick one, workshop it, move forward. And then so that we meet for coffee, or can do this also over Zoom if you're not in the area, etc., or not able to meet in person, etc. But we'll do those few hours in the morning with a client, and then Sav and I go away and work and put together we use Squarespace because we find that, Squarespace should sponsor me. I can go into why I often recommend Squarespace, not for all clients, but most clients that I work with right now. But we will then build a simple 3-page website. So they get their simple brand identity, which is like color. It's not, by no means am I promising a full brand build in 24 hours. That's just unrealistic and is not intentional or real. But they'll have their colors, their fonts. We do a word mark, so like a word, like a letter type based logo, sorry. So we're not doing like custom illustrations within these 24 hours, just to be clear. I'm not like false
That would
promising.
be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it can also include like recommended. We will usually, depending on the needs, we'll bring together like a file folder, whatever, a kit of recommended stock imagery that works for them, etc. And then the simple 3-page website, which is usually a homepage, something along the lines of an about page, or insert your needs there, and like a contact page. Like it's simple. Right. And then we have add-ons that you can add on top of that. For example, like if you need portrait photography, we do a 20-minute session, or etc. People will often add on like a business card or some sort of like an asset. Idea. So, and those typically will come in the week after, depending on what it is. The photography we do the day of, etc. So it just depends. But by dinner time, I think we say by happy hour or something the next day, you get delivered that that brand kit. Yeah. Which is like a 1-page brand guide. Like it's not again, not with the false promises, but it's everything that we find. It's what people need to get started.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it covers your bases. You can do a business card. You've got your website. You have a home, and like what I love about working with Savannah on this is that then they also walk away with like their core messaging. So you have like a really intentional way of talking about yourself that you may not have been clear on before.
I'd say it's a strong start, which is
we love it. It's been there's such fun projects, and I love seeing people walk away feeling like they're like they have that lucky charm in their pocket all of a sudden. They're like, fuck yeah, I can go share my shit.
But it also makes it tangible for people too, because I think that's huge as well for some, even for myself initially when I first started, it gave you something tangible. I think that's why a lot of like starting with the yoga was helpful for me, because that was very real. You're like, I can do this. I can teach a class. It's like a real thing, and I think giving them this brand kit is, it's not what like a lot of people always start with. Some people just start like, I remember most of the people I work with, they just started their Instagram, using Canva. Like that's how I started. I didn't like sit down with any branding person. I was just like, hey, here you go, throw this out here and hope for the best,
And again, like nothing wrong with that, right?
No.
Just people will, I think all of our brains work so differently. Different people will need different building blocks at the beginning. Yeah. So for somebody, it's just like easy to just get it out there. For somebody else, they might be like, oh fuck, but I don't know. I don't know.
No, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
I don't even know what font to pick, or how. Like when I'm in Canva, like there's too many choices and everything looks different. Like how do I do that? Like how do I choose? Right. So yeah, different strokes for different folks.
Oh, absolutely. And not everybody is like wanting to create. They're not all in that place of like I'm able to create, or I can see it. Sometimes I meet people that's just not where their eye goes, or that's not their thing. Like they work more in like I don't know, like not creative fields and things like that.
Or a different creative field, or the piece for me too that's so important. And again, not always possible depending on where you're at resource wise. But I think it's so important to recognize when you're able to outsource the things that that aren't your superpower, so that you can get back to doing the work you're meant to do in the world.
That's huge, and that's so nice that you say that, because I think about that all the time. And I don't even know if you and I talked about this, but like wanting to do it all, because you are just feeling like when you're creating your own thing, you're kind of the every person thing, You're hands-on, and I'm like, oh, but this like thing that I'm okay at, and I can do it, whatever. It's taking me away from time that I could be spending, becoming a better whatever it is I'm trying to be. Yep. So it's like I'm really trying to like make a good website, but it's like, okay, I can, but is it taking me away from like, do I have to?
Is that where your time should be spent?
Right. Like I could be learning how to be a better yoga teacher. I could be learning how to be a better photographer. That's what we're trying to do here.
And for the hands-on entrepreneur, I think often that can be, or hands-on business owner, whatever you want to call yourself. I think that sometimes that can be asking someone that isn't you to set you up, so that you can easily be hands-on going forward. Like it doesn't have to be like, depending on the resources available at the time, it doesn't have to be asking someone else to do it all, but it's like asking someone to do the branding or do the website.
Yes,
or
support.
And like again, this is actually often why we use Squarespace, because it's so user-friendly for someone to just be able to update a new business owner doesn't have to pay someone to update a photo. Right? Like that minimum, whatever it is, $50 charge to update a photo
on the
or
website
something.
Or something.
That's not, to upload something new. I'm like, that isn't necessarily the best use of your time and resources. Sometimes you do need someone who's on the back end on a monthly basis to do a set of updates, and that is a good use of your resources.
It's true.
But sometimes
it's true.
You just need someone to set you. You just need someone to set you up, right? just to free up. Otherwise, I mean, again, with me bringing on a marketing team, like the amount of time and energy that I spend on that, and it's just so hard for me to see for my own business, and like to create a plan that I'll stick to, like, and even I'm like looking at bringing someone on to execute some of those marketing pieces. Like, as someone who's a creative and it's like a personal brand of mine, I foresee myself always being the one to make the content, whether or not I've helped doing that, but I don't have to be the one pulling it all together and posting and like and dealing with the logistics side of things, right? Like there are totally pieces that you can or can work towards outsourcing if it means that you can then actually spend your time where it serves the world and your clients. Like me ruminating with a giant piece of paper trying to figure out a marketing schedule or like whatever content goes with each of them. Right. Like that's not necessarily, it's so funny though, I love doing that for other people, but for my brand, the amount of time I waste on that is not helping anybody.
Well, because again, like we talked about earlier, you're close to it. It's so different, you know, and and like all the you're in the pickle jar, you know, and I feel like you're so close to it, but it also like I just take my stuff like almost too seriously sometimes, you know. And I'm like, well, it's gotta be perfect, and I can't have it be wrong.
But again, no one wants perfect.
Nobody wants perfect.
Not in that sense of the word.
I know. It's so true.
No one wants perfect.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and so yeah, all these different little elements for sure like come into play, and things you just have to do it to experience it. You know, you gotta like get everything kind of happening, because no matter what, it really doesn't matter. Like you could talk to people who are like 20, 25 years into being an entrepreneur and like all of these things and creating and expressing themselves, and there's still like something else that like comes up.
There's like, always like a very long to-do list or thing that needs to shift, and that's one thing that I've learned, and I say I tread carefully with this, because there's obviously, if you're about to launch a business or brand or something, there are pieces that have to be dialed in. Mm-hmm. However, you're also going to shift them. So like even I see this a lot specifically with social media, which we don't need to get into social media, but what I see a lot is people who are like too nervous to start posting.
Yes.
But like like not that many people even actually see it in the grand scheme of things. No one's gonna remember the reel that you posted.
People don't care as much as you either.
No.
You know, like,
and so it's like
not in a bad way, just in a people don't care. You know, like
because people don't care in the sense that they're not gonna sit there and tear it apart.
No,
the way that you will.
The way that you will.
And the thing is, if you just are able to start sharing or posting, or and this doesn't just apply to social media, but if you're like able to get your work out there, the sooner you get it out there and share it. This is as this is coming out of my mouth, I feel like I've learned this from someone.
I feel like I've heard something.
And I can't think of who. I want to credit Rick Rubin, but I have no idea.
Oh, I love him.
So good. But the more you can get it out there, and the sooner you can get it out there, and the more you share, the quicker you're going to be able to reiterate and get to the place that you want to be.
It's true.
I have no idea where I've
heard I don't know, but you know, I feel like it attaches a little bit to
But I also feel
stuff.
it. I like see it in the work that I do too. Once I got over the hurdle of sharing work, and once I got over whatever, the fear, the vulnerability, whatever, of like sharing shit, it feels like pretty easy. I don't really care about sharing stuff. Like it doesn't.
No, not
there's
anymore.
No nerves.
No nerves. No.
And it's actually kind of fun.
Super fun. Very fulfilling.
But like the way that I share and the way that I create has shifted since I started sharing, from it being like stressful and I have to like a creative part of my practice.
Well, you gotta allow for that flexibility for allow it to change too. You know, even the fonts that you choose. Initially, the fonts I chose are not the ones I use now. Yeah. Totally. You know, just that openness and flexibility.
And they probably won't be a handful of years from now, because as a person who like your brand is you, and like it being a personal brand, you'll change. Yeah. So like of course what you're sharing with the world will change, and it should change with you. You know?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm always out there in the world talking to people, and I feel like very much a motivational person, or like a catalyst for people, because so many times have I convinced people like, just do it, just like start. It's so fulfilling. You're gonna love it. Like even the finances. I met a girl recently, you know, and I've been telling her. She's like, I've always wanted to do my own thing. I'm like, do it. Let's just do it. Like just get it going. Like, you know, I'll help you. Like whatever you need, advice. I don't care. I'm here for you. Whatever. And I was sharing with her the taxes, like how you might want to start to look at your, you know, bookkeeping a little bit. And she's like, oh, that looks like, see, I don't like that element of it. And I said to her, but when it's yours, and when it's like the money that you're spending, and like the things that you're doing and your expenses and your income, thrilling. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be thrilling, but you don't mind it.
Yeah.
You know, you might not like it so much, but it's like,
Or
it's not like looking,
satisfying.
it's very satisfying, you know, and you start to understand yourself a little bit more, your business a little bit more, and you're proud of yourself. Like when you look at like the income that you brought in, I'm like, oh, I'm proud of myself. Like I did this.
This is one of those interesting things too, that like, I've done my own, like I've managed my own finances.
Yeah, I
for
do my
business.
own bookkeeping for sure. Yeah.
And thank you, that was the term
Yeah.
I was searching for. And I'm in the middle of shifting that slightly. I'm not doing all of it these days.
It's a lot.
However, I'm so glad there's a lot of it that I still do, and I actually do manage. I still do all my own receipts and stuff like that.
Yeah, so do I.
What it lets me see is where I'm spending money.
Yeah.
And like
That's
it's
the thing,
very
the
hands on.
understanding. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I know where, and not to make it good or bad, but where, like, what areas am I spending money in my business that are bringing a return in versus not.
Yeah.
It, again, not wrong. Like, definitely, I've spent a lot of money on fabric and don't necessarily always make the money back.
off of it. Yeah.
But
it's good for the heart.
yeah, but it's a
good for
choice, and it's
a choice.
intentional at
Yep,
this point.
it's true.
I know it.
It's true.
Like, it's not just a blind spot
Like
or something I'm ignoring and putting
Mhm.
under the rug. I'm aware, and it's a choice.
Yes.
Like, we were talking about film photography. That's something that in the last few years I took the gas pedal off of a little bit because it didn't make sense for my business or for me at that time.
To
and
be
something that I would love
and doing that.
Yeah, and it's something that I am curious about bringing back in and focusing on more. But at the time, it was a big money suck that wasn't bringing me joy or income. So like then I'm just giving people money.
You know what, I like sharing what you're like saying to me here, because what you've said to me is that there was a time where you wanted to stop doing photography and you were like, I don't want to do this anymore, it's not bringing me joy. And I was doing film photography and I decided I don't want to do it, doesn't bring me joy. And this in and of itself is super, super important to connect with and share, because I see that too for people where they don't want to do something. They're like, I don't want to tie myself in for 10 years because I'm going to get exhausted of it. I'm like, but you can do whatever you want. You don't have to. If tomorrow you don't want to do it, don't do it. You know? And that's huge.
And I think what's so important about what you're saying is for a brand, for your foundations to be clear, in the sense that for me, I don't just offer brand design, or I don't just offer portrait photography. What I love to do is to create visual narratives for brands and people through brand design, strategy, and art. That can look so many different ways.
Yes, it can.
So it means that I can flow in and out of photography. I can flow in and out of website design. I mean, heck, even one day maybe I'll flow in and out of brand identity design, which is something that piece I will say has always been really consistent for me. But you don't know. Like, who knows?
No. And what you've done, Mallory, is you've created your own permission in flexibility.
Now that's a practice. Let me
course,
just say
but I understand. I know, I totally got you. Yes, but you still have adapted that.
Yeah.
You still have worked on that practice, and you still have brought that in, and it's still something that's living true in you because you're sharing it with me, and that's what's translating. I'm like, yeah, she's able to be like, I don't really want to do that thing right now, and even people who don't even want to be entrepreneurs, they just hold back because I'm not sure, whatever. And I'm like, you could try something for 6 months, like. You know, people like, if you like, I dropped out of university. That's considered to be like a failure for a lot of people. But for me, I'm like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. I don't want to do it. Yeah. It's not a failure. I learned a lot. And it's great. And it's super valuable for me.
Well, and like the piece that's so important here is to have a clear foundation. When I talk about creating visual narratives, that's my like foundation. That's my why. That's what I love, and that can show up in so many different ways.
Very broad. Yeah.
Whatever you were going to university for, like whatever drew you there, you had a gut reason that's still true with whatever decisions you're making.
Absolutely.
You know, so like your actions and like what you're offering can change, and what's important. And sometimes your why will change, which is so, and you have to give yourself permission for that too.
Absolutely.
And I think it should evolve as each year it changes a person. But if you're clear on that, again, back to like the idea of being clear on your priorities. If you're clear on those foundational pieces, then any decision you make, whether it's in life, in branding, in etc., in any action you take, any step forward you take, if you're clear on those foundational pieces, then everything will be in alignment. Which, talking about branding, consistency is like the most important thing. I actually, at the end of the day, don't have to like your colors or your logo or whatever. But if you're sharing consistently, then I know who you are.
Oh, yeah.
And like consistency built, I mean, this is like a tale as old as time or whatever. Again, I think I'm using the phrase wrong, but I love using things in the way I want to use them. But
an artist.
But if you're consistent, consistency builds trust.
Yes, it does.
Right? It builds familiarity, which will eventually turn to trust, which turns, it's a relationship that you're building.
Yeah.
Which
it also creates relaxation in people, you know, trust and like comfort and relaxation. You know, it's instantly familiar. And that's why I talk so much about translating things without even having to even speak or use words. How simply can I translate that this is my work right here without even needing to know what Instagram it was posted from? You just know that, oh, that's Whitney's photo. Because you just know the way, you just know the way that it looks or the way that it is, right?
It's the same idea of like you can recognize a friend from down the street from the way they walk, from their toque, from whatever it is. And then what you like are trying to avoid in branding is that day that you don't recognize that person. Whether it's because they've like totally changed their vibe, their aesthetic, whatever it is. And by all means, humans, go reinvent yourself, do your thing.
Of course. But
we don't want that in branding when all of a sudden I don't recognize you from down the street. Like even think about like there's like specific colors that you'll see and think of like specific, especially big corporate brands.
Yes, I talk about this a lot with people too. That like you, like whether or not you've eaten at McDonald's in the last X number of years, when you see that red and yellow, you know, like it doesn't matter. Or the animals for TELUS, those little, you know, you see the animals, boom, TELUS.
A cute animal on a white backdrop.
That's
doesn't matter
TELUS
the animal.
Instantly.
Doesn't matter.
It's so
That's
true.
a really good example. 100%.
For sure.
Because they've consistently, again, it's reiterated. It's looked really different over the years. But that has been a consistent part of their brand for. So I don't even know how many years.
Well, and the psychology of branding just in and of itself, you know, too, because sometimes I do see companies that change their logo, but they kept the color the same. So, okay, there's a shift there. There's a bit of a difference, whatever. But the color is the same. And you're like, oh, okay, well, there's recognition there. It's very easily translated to me that this is still this company.
It's the idea that, like, when someone rebrands, is product recognition still there? Or have you changed? And I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but there's a percentage of elements, like based on studies, like I don't know, I guess psychological science studies, whatever. Cool. But there's like a percentage of elements that you can change before people don't recognize it. And we'll
have to look that up. Actually, we'll add it in the little like thing or whatever. But that's very interesting to know. There's
someone I'm obsessed with his Instagram right now that shares a lot of this kind of information so powerfully, and his Instagram is like Schwinnebago or something like that. Nice. But anybody who loves branding and like this,
follow this.
You should go check him out. He's really cool.
Okay, sounds good.
Hilarious. Currently has like a beef going with Verizon. You should go check it out. It's hilarious. Like he's hilarious, but he talks a lot about branding. Okay. And I think I'm pretty sure his account would have been where I was looking at. He actually shared like a specific percentage. But it's all percentage or not, science or not, it's the idea of whether or not you recognize a friend, you know? Or have they pulled a 180 and you're like, hey, like checking in, like, are you okay? Like, you're a really different person. And sometimes it's fucking awesome.
True.
But good for them.
Yeah.
But you don't want... Okay, well, we'll actually take two on that. If you have, as a brand, if you've built like a powerful audience base, brand recognition, you're looking for a rebrand for whatever reason, you don't want to lose that recognition, right? Unless you do. If there's been like a scandal or like if there's a reason that you want to rebrand and not have that close association anymore, then by all means, you don't want to keep every element, you know? Or like, it's just like being so intentional. Like even... I was thinking about this. I don't even know if this is true. I was making this up in my head, but this made sense to me last night. I was looking at, I'm waiting for something to be ordered from Amazon. Speaking of, I hate that I'm talking so much about them.
Okay.
I'm using them, but hey,
you know what? I got the little mic stand from Amazon, so it's okay.
Here we are.
You have permission here.
And I was looking at like I was trying to figure out when it's gonna be delivered, and it said it like listed the name of who it was being shipped by or something, and it was, I'm sure they own the company or something. But it was a name that I like wouldn't have even known how to pronounce. There's no branding. And I was like, oh, they don't want me to remember that. They did not make that user friendly.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want you to be hung up on the shipper, drop shipper fulfillment company that didn't fulfill it on time or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, again, that was intentional. It's not like a catchy name that I'm gonna remember and be like, oh yeah, Amazon uses them. They want you to remember Amazon. They don't want you to be like, oh, the subsidiary of us or this partner company or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so again, when I talk about like things need to be consistent and user friendly and blah blah blah, those things are all important unless you don't want people to remember that.
I
Whether
think it
it's the
depends on
scandal,
your intention.
Yeah.
You know, even those ones where your brand isn't your face really. Sometimes people don't want a lot of that stuff. They keep the brand has no face really.
Totally.
And there's an intention there.
But again, consistency is going to be important.
Huge.
You know?
Yeah, huge.
So it's like if once a year or like once in a while you pop your face in, but outside of that there's no talk of you, who you are, and people are like, who's that person? What's going on?
Yeah,
right?
Just curious.
So yeah. Just being intentional and consistency are so important. Again, you can have there is a lot of ugly ass logos out there.
Oh yeah,
and whatever.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
I'm sure there's a
sometimes
lot
I
of
see
companies
stuff.
I love.
Yeah,
that
I'm like,
have
oh,
ugly
I
logos.
hate this logo. It's so
Yeah.
funny that you feel this way, you know, because I don't meet a lot of people that are like that. But I'm very like some super particular person, you know, and so sometimes I see things and I'm like, this is so ugly. Like, why did you think that this was good, you know? And like, I do it with branding and logos all the time, you know. I'm like, oh, I hate this. It's terrible.
Yeah, like who okayed this?
Yeah, who okayed this? But also like we're so funny. Like this is like what we've been paying attention to like since we were kids. It's just kind of like, oh, that branding is terrible. Like, we found the right fields for us.
I was gonna say we have a certain type of brand.
Yeah, we do for sure. You know, like I feel like things just have to be like attractive for me too. Like I just like
oh
things
my
are
gosh.
beautiful.
Yes.
You know,
or just interesting.
Interesting is good too. Yeah,
you know,
and interesting is beautiful. You know,
like for me, like my word one way, like I just bought a new cabinet off Facebook Marketplace, a little metal cabinet.
Yeah.
The chick was so nervous. She was like, just so you know, parts of it are rusted. It was outside, and I was like, to be honest, that's 100%
better.
what caught my attention.
Yeah.
I was like, that is what I want. She's like, oh, you'll love it then. I'm like,
perfect. Found
great.
the right person
yes,
for it.
exactly. It found the right home.
Yeah. So I guess our key takeaway is here when it comes to like creating and whatever and branding. I would say what I feel like I've not only learned but just shared a lot of is like being pretty open and flexible and like just like letting things kind of play themselves out and whatever. And I feel like you've talked a lot and like we've talked a lot about consistency.
My favorite.
Yes, and I guess like even just being identifiable, you know, to people very easily and stuff like that.
Which like, again, it doesn't have to be hard. Like just be you.
Yeah, I think it's good to take things down to bare bones sometimes and just simplify.
Foundations.
Yeah, simplify your life a little bit. Yeah, don't overcomplicate things. Yeah, I think it's, you know, sometimes people they want to be too perfect, and then like you said before, they don't even post it all. They don't even get the thing going because they just want it to be too perfect. I'm like, okay, come on, you know, whatever. Something is better than nothing, always.
Yep.
Always.
And then you reiterate.
Yeah.
And just be intentional.
Yeah. Well, if I look back at like my first posts and stuff, they're not very good. Like, you know, like they're not great. They're okay.
They're also probably fine.
Exactly. Well, that's it too. You know, I
can pretty much guarantee they didn't have a negative impact.
That's true too. You know, and if anything, people are typically in your corner and like cheering you on and proud of you and happy that you did that. And it is very vulnerable to start doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So go cheer on your friends who are starting businesses.
Yeah, right. Exactly. How would you not feel stoked? But it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy
totally.
for sure. Is there anything else that you feel that we didn't touch on or that you want to share, like key points that feel important?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, we wipe our hands clean.
Yeah, no expectations, no agenda. It was just fun to shoot the shit.
Yeah, I know. That's how I feel too. Yeah. I was like, I want to go shoot the shit with Mallory.
I love it. Anytime.
Love it.
Totally.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing this space with